very much for the opportunity to share my journey with your group. My name is Dan Shockley. I'm retired Navy. I served on active duty for 22 years on 7 different ships, and three of those ships were deployed to the Persian Gulf at different times. And my last 2 years were spent on the ground on a little island off the coast of Saudi Arabia called Bahrain. And I got over there. I got over there right
1958
after.
in the Navy.
Yeah, I got over there right after 9/11, and I spent my last 2 years over there. We started operations enduring an Iraqi freedom while I was there. Yeah, it was quite a ride. I retired in 2003, September 2003, and I registered with the VA healthcare system. And you go in for your annual checkups, and it was recommended that I have a colonoscopy when I turn 50. And I said, yeah, sure. When I turn 50, we'll schedule it. So when I turned 50, I scheduled it. I went in for my first and only colonoscopy. Come to find out, the findings revealed 100 polyps embedded through my colon, rectum, and anus. And one of those polyps was creating an 80% blockage in my transverse colon. And my GI doctor recommended, or actually referred me to, a certified genetic counselor. Now, at the time, I was in Hawaii, so I forgot to mention that. So the VA Medical Center in Hawaii is on the same campus as the Tripler Army Medical Center. So a couple of days after my colonoscopy, I went in to see the certified genetic counselor. They suspected that I had a hereditary colon cancer syndrome. However, we won't know for sure until we have germline DNA testing performed. So I sat down with the genetic counselor, and she brought in a colorectal surgeon, and they drew blood and got my saliva sample. She said the closest molecular oncology lab is in Pasadena, California, and it's going to take about 3 weeks to get the results back. She said, in the meantime, we're going to explain to you what we think you have, what type of surgery you'll need, and then you'll be outfitted with a permanent ostomy for the rest of your life. So being the military mindset, I broke it down into 3 phases where I read as much as I could about the mutation they thought that I had. Now, there wasn't a lot of information out there available. I was provided some credible resources, so I was able to read as much as I could about that and try to understand it all. The other phase that I put myself into is I read about the type of surgery, which would be removing the colon, rectum, and anus and be outfitted with a permanent ileostomy. And then the third phase, I was mentally preparing myself for having a permanent ostomy. So, theory is one thing, practical application is another. I did have an open door with my genetic counselor, my colorectal surgeon, the chief of surgery at Tripler, as well as my GI doctor and my primary care doctor at the VA. So it actually took 6 weeks to get the results back. And they did find I do have the mutation. It's a hereditary colon cancer syndrome. However, it wasn't the one I thought that I had. It's more rare. What I have is attenuated FAP. And if you're familiar, I'm not sure if you're familiar with FAP, but this is a subvariant of it. Attenuated FAP was discovered by the late Dr. Henry T. Lynch. So if you've heard of Lynch syndrome, well, that's named after Dr. Lynch. And in 1984, Dr. Lynch received a grant from the American Cancer Society to do his research about attenuated FAP. So 6 years later, the results came, and he co-authored a peer-reviewed publication with his findings. And this is a mutation. It's known as adenomatous polyposis coli, APC. It's in the 22nd chromosome. Now, for those who have FAP, that could be anywhere from your childhood, actually after birth, all the way to 49 to 50 years old. If you have attenuated FAP, that's between 50 and 55. And I was 51 when I had my colonoscopy. So I was right there in the window. Now, when the findings came in, I was talking to my genetic counselor and colorectal surgeon, and I was recommended to consider the surgery. And I said, I want the surgery. He goes, now you don't have to have it however you need it, because the longer you wait to have the surgery, the higher percentage any of those 100 polyps could develop into a hereditary colon cancer. So I wanted the surgery, and they had the surgery 2 weeks later. And then when I woke up, it was a like 6 hour, a little over 6 hours. I knew where I was, I knew what happened, and the first thing I asked the team there in the recovery room was, did my surgeon find everything he was looking for? And then my surgeon came in, I talked to him, he says, well, I feel confident we have everything. However, I need to wait for the biopsy to come back from the colon. It's going to be about 8 days. And so I was, at the meantime, I had 35 staples in my midline, and then where my anus used to be, I had 13 staples, and I'm 6'1". I was about 155 pounds at the time. So I was just healing at this point, just very sore. However, I was very aware of what was going on, and my wound nurse came in several times a day, and we talked about different things because I needed to know how to be able to take care of myself, having an ostomy now. I had lots of conversations with my medical team. I had been doing some research online prior to my surgery, so I was now communicating. Back then I had a BlackBerry, so I was communicating while I was recovering. I was in the Tripler hospital for 12 days, so I was communicating with as many um, individuals in the colon cancer arena and the ostomy. I was started communicating with the UOAA early on, and I was outfitted with Hollister products. So I started communicating with them. I had a patient, what was it called? Patient coordinator at Hollister. So I was communicating with her as well. And so what happened is I embraced this from the onset. You know, my mindset is I tend not to think about things I'm unable to control, such as medical issues. What I can control is my positive attitude, and it's brought me this far on God's green earth. Why change now? Now, it's important to note that I'm asymptomatic. There's no family history. I'm the youngest of my siblings. My brother's 12 years older than me. My sister's 4 years older than me. My parents have passed away many years ago. My paternal and maternal relatives have passed away. I'm the youngest of my first cousins. So I shared as much as I can with my siblings and my first cousins that I'm in, you know, about what I have, and they share it with their GI doctors. I have to go through, I've been going through routine endoscopic procedures, EGD, side view, scope, and either a single or a double balloon enteroscopy. Now, this started in May 8th of 2012. Then I had the surgery, and then 13 I went in for my EGD and a side view scope. The following year, which is 2014, I had the procedures done in Hawaii. Then my GI doctor at the VA, he wanted me to have this single balloon or double balloon enteroscopy. Well, there's no facility in Hawaii at the time that is credited to perform that procedure. And if you're not familiar with it, it's a balloon enteroscopy that goes into your small intestine. And so the VA was flying me to San Jose to go to Palo Alto VA hospital. And the director of the GI clinic, because I want to perform this procedure, he said that, okay, everything's okay. No cause for alarm. However, I recommend you have this again in 2 years. So I went back to Hawaii and continued with my annual surveillance. And in 2016, I just packed my sea bag and I moved to the right outside of Palo Alto. It was a little town called Atherton, and I was right next to Palo Alto, so I was being seen there. And eventually, I migrated up here. I'm in a little town right next to Lodi, California. You remember that song by Creedence Clearwater Revival about, Lodi? Well, I'm right next to that town. I'm in a little town called Galt, G-A-L-T. And um, 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I was at Palo Alto for my routine endoscopic procedures, and the findings revealed a 3 centimeter adenoma in my jejunum, the very beginning of my small intestine. So as soon as I woke up, my GI, the director of the clinic, he was talking to me, and I talked to him before and after the procedure. I carry a binder with me of all of the findings and all the photographs they took. So we just have we continue our conversation every time I'm down there. And he said, Daniel, we found this 3 centimeter adenoma. I recommend you consider surgery. And I'm thinking he's talking about the Whipple procedure. And he says, well, there's a newer technology. It's called a pancreas sparing duodenectomy resection. I know that's a lot to digest, but basically what they're going to do is take about 60 centimeters of the jejunum, redo the bile ducts to the pancreas, and then remove the gallbladder. So I said, well, I knew about this. The older I get, the higher percentage that I would have to have a surgery similar to the Whipple. And I said, where do you recommend I have the surgery? And he says, well, there's got the MD Anderson in Houston, the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and Stanford University. And I said, well, Stanford's 2 miles down the road. I want to go there. He goes, well, I know a surgeon there that's done this surgery for 2 of my patients, and they're doing fine. I said, well, I want his name because I want the VA to refer me there. And so I got referred. I got accepted. I was assigned one of the nation's leading pancreatic cancer surgeons. I didn't have pancreatic cancer. However, that's the type of surgeon that I would need for this particular procedure. And later on, I found out that the director of the GI clinic at Palo Alto is actually faculty at Stanford. He's on loan to the VA, and the surgeon he referred me to, they're colleagues, they're faculty at Stanford. So no pun intended, they know me inside and out. So hey, you gotta have fun with it too. Sense of humor is one of the better things that help out along the ride here. So I had the surgery. Now the diagnosis for the adenoma was in September of 2020, and I was referred the following month to Stanford to see the surgeon, and I said, well, I want the surgery. However, I really don't want to have the surgery before March of 2021. And I said, the reason is because I'm a big baseball fan. If I'm going to be laid up recovering, I want to be able to watch baseball. So he said, that's fine. So yeah, so it worked out, and I ended up being a patient at Stanford for 20 days, and the surgery was successful. Now, the important thing to note is when I had my total proctocolectomy surgery in 2012, I asked for an epidural to the nerve block, right? So I never, when I had this this pancreas sparing surgery, I asked for the epidural again, and what happened is my stomach was asleep, and as well as my stoma, for 6 weeks. So I couldn't eat for 6 weeks. So they set me up with TPN, and once I got discharged from the hospital, I drove home from Stanford up here, about an hour and a half, hour and 45-minute drive. As soon as I got to the front door, or as soon as I got home at the front door, the infusion company had already had my TPN, and I hooked it up, and every night for the next 2 weeks I was using the TPN. Went back to the Stanford, and they reviewed everything. I had a checkup the week after the surgery and 2 weeks after the surgery. And other than just building my endurance, everything was fine and continues to be fine. The whole ride, though, it's asymptomatic, and I just go about my life as if everything happened, as if nothing happened. So, but what I try to do is I try to share my journey on as many platforms as possible, whether it's in person or virtual. So I do this globally. I have a lot of colleagues in in the UK, Wales, Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, India. Done a couple of Zoom calls in Australia. But I just try to share my journey on the importance of early detection, and also the impact that my positive attitude has had in my ability to recover. And then what I did is I adopted 4 words when I got diagnosed, and my 4 words were attitude, because my positive attitude, like I said before, has brought me this far in life. Why change now? Another word I adopted was the word faith, and just faith in general. What is faith? Is you believe in things you're unable to see. I think I remember hearing a quote one time. It's called "Eminence of the Unseen." So, I mean, if you look outside, you see the tree branches swaying in the breeze. You see the effect of the breeze. However, you don't see the breeze itself. So, faith is believing in what you were unable to see. Um, and so I broke that word faith down into an acronym. I love acronyms being in the military. Um, and the acronym is full assurance, influence through hope. Because what is faith? Having hope and everything will be okay. Now, my positive attitude had a direct impact on my faith, and my faith had an impact on my ability to adapt as an ostomate. So I took the word adapt, and I think you know where I'm going with this. So I took the word adapt and I broke it down into attitude determines the ability for a positive transformation. Because what is having an ostomy? You have to transform your body into, now my ostomy surgery was planned and it's permanent. Now I know there's a lot of individuals who have planned and temporary, or unplanned and permanent, unplanned and temporary types of ostomy surgeries. But so for this presentation, I just like to share about my attitude, my faith, and my ability to adapt. And then my last word that I adopted, it was the word purpose. And what is my purpose in life is to educate the medical students and the medical professionals about attenuated FAP, to continue the legacy of Dr. Henry T. Lynch and on the importance of early detection in hopes of saving lives. Now, so if you take those 4 words, you have you have attitude, faith, adapt, and purpose. The first letters of each of those words spells out AFAP. It just happened that way. That's how my mind works. Now, 7 months after my surgery, I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Henry T. Lynch. At the time, he was 86 and a half years old, and he was, among other things, the director of preventative medicine at Creighton University, Omaha, Nebraska. He is the founding father of hereditary cancer research. He started his research back in the early 60s. Now, little did I know, my genetic counselor and colorectal surgeon been colleagues of Dr. Lynch through the decades, and he came to Hawaii to do some academic lectures. So I was personally introduced to Dr. Lynch before one of his lectures at the University of Hawaii Cancer Center, and then by my genetic counselor. So we attended the lecture, then we sat down afterwards, had lunch, and then we talked for an hour and 50 minutes. So I got to talk to the world-renowned leader about attenuated FAP. He considered me a colleague, and we stayed in contact. So when I had my routine surveillance, I had the pathology reports. I would send them to him at Creighton, and then he would give me his feedback. And he passed away on June 2nd of 2019 on National Cancer Day. And how fitting, the founding father of hereditary cancer research passes away on National Cancer Day. So, but my mission, my purpose is to continue his legacy by educating the medical students and the medical professionals, because attenuated FAP is listed as a rare disease. And for those of you in the medical community, realize that the rare diseases are not part of the curriculum for medical students. So I'm part of for the last 4 years, there's a contest, or essay contest, sponsored by the Rare Beacon out in the UK. And what they have is they pair medical students up with patients who have a rare disease, and then they compete for an essay. And I've been doing that for the last 4 years. So I've had the opportunity with a medical student in Scotland, one in Wales this past year. A couple years ago, it was with one in London, and then 2 years ago, it was with a medical student down in South Africa. And so that's another thing I like to do, is to be able to help educate the medical students about this mutation. And there's I don't know, probably 70% of the medical professionals that I communicate with, they're not familiar with attenuated FAP as well. But like I said, I want to be able to give back, like I said, on the importance of early detection, and also share my journey with fellow ostomates. That in my opinion, my personal approach was a positive attitude has helped me, get through all this. And I just, I enjoy my journey. Um, and I've relocated, like I said, back in June of 2016 here to the Central Valley, just below Sacramento. And I'll be going to Stanford, I think next summer. So I have another year before I have to go back for. So they say now I have to go every other year. But the big piece was this pancreas sparing surgery, because, as you know, once the mutation reaches the pancreas, and that's going to be a different story. But we're in a good place. So, but I just want to thank you for the opportunity to get to share my journey on with your group, and feel free to ask any questions.